here every Monday at 3 o'clock Pacific Daylight Time. And thank you LCM TV for having us. And you were listening to Sam Houston's music from his CD Beyond the Crescent Moon. Regarding Sam, you can find his CDs on his website, which is Sam, E-U-S-T-O-N, Houston.com. He's a very talented musician, and I love his music, which is why we play it here on the show. The last few weeks, I've been going over the 3 difficult practices. And in Buddhism, it's called the 3 difficult practices because they're very difficult. And they always say, do your best to practice the 3 difficult practices. Do your best meaning, it's very difficult, so just do the best you can without beating yourself up in any way when we find that we're not quite making it. The first difficult practice is acknowledging your behavior. Just looking at it, noticing it. And notice when you're hooked into your habitual patterns of behavior that are causing you suffering. We call this Shenpa. With the Shenpa is the actual moment that you get caught in a pattern of behavior that is causing you discomfort or anger or some kind of uncomfortable feeling. The Shenpa is the actual moment that it happens. So you may be talking to someone and everything is going along just fine. And somebody says something that just pushes a button, and in that moment that button gets pushed, in that half a second when your body reacts to it and you may take a step back because your button's been pushed, in that tiny bit of a second, that is Shenpa. And just noticing that is very important. Notice that, wow, my button just got pushed. Don't need to react to it. Don't need to go along with your usual program of chain reaction acting. Just notice that Shenpa moment. When you go over and over and over something in your head, after your button's been pushed, for example, if someone says something to you, you're in the grocery store, and someone says something rude to you, or you're taking too much time in line for them and they're getting aggravated. Maybe you go in your car later and now you're playing this tape, this story in your head. Boy, that lady was rude, and how could she say these things to me, and who does she think she is? And before you know it, you're home a half an hour later, still winding this story around in your head. That's called being caught or hooked in the Shenpa. So this thinking is what gets us in trouble. It's that dramatizing of things, making it bigger than it is. And getting caught in that is something that we usually do. It's a normal pattern for most people. And it causes us to be very stressed and very unhappy. So when it happens, you might say to yourself, Shenpa. If you don't quite know what to do, noticing it and calling it Shenpa may be the thing to do. Excuse me. I've got a great case of allergies today, so hopefully I won't be clearing my throat too much. But this getting caught in patterns of behavior is something to notice. Just something to look at and observe. And not get emotionally involved in it. Not say, oh darn, there I go again. I'm doing it again. Because in saying that, you're kind of disciplining yourself in a negative way, and we don't want that either. Negative responses can be just as damaging as getting caught and hooked in the behavior. The second difficult practice is doing something different. And this is very difficult because we are so used to our patterns of behavior that choosing to do something different and making a choice for fresh behavior is very difficult. First of all, we're so used to our patterns of behavior that that's our go-to place. We're just used to it. We don't even think about it. It's just a knee-jerk reaction. We just go there. Secondly, where else do you go? I've had people go, okay, I'd like to react differently, but I don't know what to do. Where do I go? I don't know what else to do. And so my response to that is, don't really go anywhere if you don't know where to go, but just pause. Just pause and notice that you're caught, you don't know where to go, and take a breath and just kind of check your body, see where you're holding your tension in your shoulders, in your chest. Maybe your eyebrows are furrowing because you're angry or frustrated. Notice where you're holding it. That's a big part of taking that second step. And then the third difficult practice is making this fresh choice a way of life and practicing it daily in your daily affairs. When you're getting caught in your shenpa, which happens repeatedly throughout the day in a normal day, making it a practice actually makes it easier. Like anything else, when you practice it, it makes it easier. So that's what we've been discussing. And, you know, if you want to get caught up on what we've been discussing, maybe you've missed the last few shows, I archive all of these shows on my website, which is called apositivelight.com. And there's a button up there called TV Archive Shows, and all the shows are there and they're labeled. So if you want to catch up and think, you know, this is something I might benefit from, this is something I could use, please do go back and watch the shows. See if you can catch something in there that'll help you understand a different way of acting. Maybe it'll bring something to your attention that you weren't aware of. And there's some suggestions in there on how to do these things, some step-by-step instructions, as well as a couple of meditations too. So last week I suggested that we pick one day, just one day, any day that you felt like doing it, and intentionally not act on anything that you think or say. So when I asked you to do that, just pick a day where you're going to wake up and say, you know what, today I'm going to try to be aware of when my button is pushed. I'm not going to react to it. I'm not going to think anything negative. I'm just going to notice, that pushed my button. I'm going to take a breath and pause and just look at it. You don't need to look too deeply. Just notice it. And you might label it with the word shenpa to give it an identity. And then let it go. Don't react. Practice not reacting. It's very difficult to do because it's too easy to get caught up in our normal behavior. Also, becoming aware of when the button is being pushed helps you to heighten your awareness of how often that shenpa arises, how often that hooked feeling comes up, where you're hooked into an automatic response. If someone cuts you off in traffic, your automatic response may be very angry, and you have the typical go-to place you go to, and maybe a stream of words comes out of your mouth. And you know, we do these things without even thinking. They're so habitual that we're caught in it. And then the anger starts to rise, the adrenaline starts to flow, the story starts to spin in our mind. It becomes bigger and bigger. We're adding fuel to the spark of shenpa. We're pouring kerosene on the fire. We're fanning the flames. Every time we do this and make something bigger than it is, we are getting caught in the shenpa. And it's not a happy place. It's not a happy place. But sometimes, you know, when I'm talking about this, some people will bring it to my attention. They'll say, you know, it feels really good to get angry. When I'm mad, I want to be angry and express it. Otherwise, aren't you just stuffing your emotions? And that's a valid point, and it's a valid question. To notice how we react, and notice when you're hooked into that habitual pattern of response. is not really noticing, it's not really stuffing the anger, it's not avoiding a response. It's identifying what is causing you to stress yourself out. So once you identify what's stressing yourself out and increasing the stress and increasing the adrenaline, increasing the anger, you can identify it and there, at that point make a choice to not go there. Maybe make a different choice that's going to cause you to be able to let it go and not let it bother you. Not to let that story spin into something bigger than it is. So this is the 3 difficult practices, and this is why they're in place. Once you pause and you feel that pull that wants to take you into that stream of anger, and you just want to get tugged down into it like a undertow, it just pulls you down, and before you know it, you're caught up in it and you can't get out of it. Your behavior is turning into this huge thing, which doesn't need to be. But once you're in it, you're causing yourself a lot of stress. Most people stress themselves. And when they come to me and want to learn meditation,
We're back.
So I thought it was interesting that our engineer, Mark, said we lost our stream when I was talking about being pulled into an undertow upstream. And it's funny because, I could get really upset and think, darn it, why doesn't this stream work? And why does this happen and interrupt me? And I think it's funny because we have absolutely no power over these things. It is what it is. And so you gotta laugh at it. But the point I was trying to make is noticing when you cause your own stress and tension is a really big part in learning how to stop it, take a breath and pause, let it go, and remind yourself there's nothing you can do about certain things, and moving forward in your life. This week, I want you to discuss using our higher mind, our intelligent mind, having a direct and immediate experience with what is happening. So if you have a direct and immediate experience with what is happening, you're actually involved in your life. Not the story you're making up about something that happened, but the day-to-day mundane things that happen in our lives. And you put all those moments together and it makes up our life. So let's make them good moments. Let's not add drama and fuel to the fire. Let's keep things nice and peaceful. And sometimes people say it's so boring. I don't know if it's boring. I'd rather, if you want to call it boring, fine. But I'd rather sit in a peaceful, quiet moment than to get caught up in the drama of something that isn't real. Pema Chodron calls it watering the seeds of anger. And I think that's a really good description. We all have anger, and there's nothing wrong with anger itself. There are times when anger, there is a place for it. There's never really a time or a place for hatred, but anger is something that there really is a time and a place for. What immediately comes to my mind is World War II, when somebody is taking over the world, basically, and deciding who can live and who must die, because some people are better than others. That makes me angry. And I think in that case, anger is a really healthy reaction, because someone should not be allowed to decide who lives and dies and who's better than another. It's not true. Talk about causing Shenpa. So when you're looking at your life and you're really becoming involved in the truth of your life instead of getting involved in the drama of what you make up, you're not watering the seeds of anger. You're actually watering the healthy seeds that are going to cause you happiness. We, in this Western society, tend to dramatize things. And if you watch television, which I don't watch a lot of television, so I've kind of weaned myself off of that. But when I did, I noticed it's full of negative messages. The media will decide who looks pretty and who is unattractive. Um, it there's a lot of judgment and negativity in it, and we get pulled into that, and it becomes part of our thought process. It becomes part of our lifestyle, and so we think that's okay, but then we're wondering why we're so stressed. And if you got to live up to something that's unrealistic, it's going to cause you stress. But looking at life for what it is and how good it really is and how good we can make it, how we can choose the good response over the negative response, the happier response and healthier response over the negative response, we can make life pretty bearable and actually at times really enjoy it. But there's a choice we come to, I think, where we're deciding whether we want to be involved in life and integrate into our lives as they are, as they truly are, or we can segregate ourselves into a place of anger and distrust and unhappiness. When we find ourselves in spaces of unhappiness, if you really look at it, if you step back and look at it, it's always something that we've, in our mind, created. And for a lot of times what we tend to do is blame others for things that we have the power to change. Even if we don't have the power to change something, rather than accept it, we tend to blame others. Oh, it's so-and-so's fault. Oh, it's that country's fault. It's always somebody else's fault. And when you think about it, even if it is, you don't have to go along with that. You don't have to get caught up in that. You don't have to make the story more than it really is. You can accept the truth of what is and either move away from it to a happier place or deal with it as it is, life on life's terms. So the 3 difficult practices really becomes difficult when you start tearing it into pieces like this and really looking at it. But I think in order to really understand how to make the changes that can cause us happiness instead of stress, we kind of have to dissect these things. We kind of have to look at them in bits and pieces and see what we want to keep and what we don't want to keep. What do we want to apply to our lives, and what can we let go of? And meditation can help with this, because in meditation, as we sit, thoughts come into our mind, but then we learn to identify the thought and let it go. And then another thought will come into our mind, and we identify the thought and let it go. And I picture a river in front of myself when I'm meditating. And when the thoughts come in, I tend to place the thought like a piece of paper or a leaf on the river and just let it go. And I'll watch it. I'm not avoiding it. I'm just not going to look at it right now. I'm going to take a little vacation from it and just let it go. And in practicing that when you're meditating, it gets easier and easier like anything else. When you get really good at it, you can learn to do that in your daily life. You can learn to be objective and look at people's behaviors or the things they say and kind of step back from it and decide whether you want to get involved or do you just want to let it go. Most of the time, misery does love company, and most of the time, people who are miserable try to draw you in. They try to draw you into their drama, and it's really easy to get hooked in. It's really easy to get hooked into someone's drama and start participating in it and adding to it and fanning those flames. So you might want to just take a look at, maybe look at how often that might happen. And if you didn't practice last week's suggestion of taking that one day and just looking at how often those buttons get pushed, how often the drama comes up, how often the stories start to spin in your mind, you might want to try that this week. And just notice it. It's a great way to look at how often it happens, because it's so habitual that we don't even know we're doing it. And then we're all caught up in it, and our emotions are all crazy, and we're really getting the adrenaline going, and then we're angry, and we're taking that anger out on other people, and they're reacting. And the cycle gets really bad sometimes, and it creates days and days of anger. So you may have known someone in your life, you think, wow, they're just an angry person. But they're really caught up in that because it's so habitual, they don't know how else to act. They don't know where else to go. And I think we all do it, some more than others, but we all do it because we're human. But when you get caught in that feeling, and it's an uncomfortable feeling, and you're not happy, you might want to look at what your choices are. So in pausing and taking a breath and stepping back, you can just notice it. It's a good first step. A lot of people will use anger to be heard. Maybe they were raised in a home that used a lot of yelling. Maybe they were in a marriage or a relationship that the communication was based on arguing. And
Back.
so we're talking about relationships that are based on yelling in order to be heard, and it becomes a habit. And you start yelling, and the other person responds yelling, because now you're yelling at them, and they're going to yell back. And so the whole conversation becomes an attack, and no one's really hearing what the other person is saying or the point they're trying to make, because we're so busy defending ourselves. It's not that unusual, but it's a very unhealthy way to communicate, because you really aren't communicating. Nobody's listening when you're yelling. I have heard people defend that, though, because they think, well, it's the only way I can be heard. And I understand that because I've been there. But if you're caught in it, you're really torturing yourself as well as the other person. So I suggest you step back from it and not engage in that, and quietly discuss it with yourself until you find a way to say, you know what, I don't want to argue with you, I don't want to fight, I want you to understand something. And I could be wrong, but still these are my feelings. And then suddenly the defenses come down and the communication opens up. It's a really good first step in releasing the Shenpa. There's also the times it happens when you're trying to make a point with someone, and you know you're absolutely right. And you know if they don't get this point, that they're just going to be going down the wrong road. And so you make it your mission to make sure they understand. And those are what's called the yes but moments. Can you let this Shenpa go? Well, yes, but they really need to know this. No, they don't. You're just going to cause yourself anxiety. When people need to know things, they learn them when they learn them. And they're not going to listen to you if they don't want to listen to you. So the yes but moments are something that you've made up in your head. You've decided somebody needs to know something. But you're causing yourself a whole lot of stress and strain when you do that. That is also a Shenpa. That's a moment when you're reacting to a button being pushed. What happens when you interrupt that yes but moment? Are you caught up in your storyline? So let's say you're really upset about something, and you say, oh, I'm caught up in the Shenpa. I'm caught up in my storyline. You start asking yourself, why am I doing this? Am I rationalizing my behavior? Am I trying to make myself feel that my behavior is okay by justifying it for some reason? And it really doesn't matter. If you are doing that, you're still causing yourself stress and strain and anxiety. And you're also causing another person stress and strain and anxiety. So when you pause in that and take a breath, you're actually cooling off that heat, that anger. So it's hard to do when you're really caught up with something and you're like, okay, wait, I'm supposed to stop and breathe and let this go. It's good to remind yourself that, and it's good to actually practice it and pause and breathe. It's not always easy to let it go. But if you're teaching yourself how to pause and breathe, you are learning a new behavior, and you're not feeding that negative anger behavior. So this is when the pausing really is effective, when we're really caught up in the yes but moments, we're really caught up in that anger. It's a really good time to stop and breathe and step back. So what does it mean when people say live in the moment? Of course, all of our moments put together makes our lifetime, and living in the moment, we are actually experiencing our lives fuller. But not all the moments are good moments. And when we hear that live in the moment, you need to remind yourself that sometimes the moments are very difficult. Sometimes they're not good moments. And living in the moment is great when you think, oh yeah, I'm just going to live in the moment and everything's going to be great. And sometimes it's not. Sometimes the moments are very trying and very difficult. Things happen that we don't like. Sometimes very painful things. But they are part of life. And when you accept life as it is, on life's terms, not the way you want it, it makes it easier to not get caught up in what you want it to be, the anxiety you create when you say that to yourself. I don't want this. I don't want this to be this way. You're fighting the truth of life. It's hard to process some things sometimes. They're very difficult. But in taking a breath and pausing and looking at it for what it is, as painful as it may be, it's still living in that moment. And in facing difficult challenges, in living life on life's terms, it actually becomes easier when these challenges present themselves, when life is a little difficult. It becomes easier to deal with. It becomes easier to sit back and breathe and say, you know what? It is what it is, and I don't like it, but I got to accept it. And then when you say that to yourself and you really feel it, you're releasing yourself from the Shenpa anxiety. So living life on life's terms and living in the moment is also living life for every moment it gives you, good, difficult, all of it. So we're going to take a break now for 2 minutes and have a commercial. We'll be back and we'll talk about some of the other things I can suggest for this upcoming week. Thanks.
You're invited to participate in a true multimedia experience coming to a home near you. LCM TV is bringing Lake County into the new millennium with news, live broadcast, information, music, talk shows, and local programming, all streaming in high definition online and soon to be on your Roku box. Join us at lcm-tv.com or be a part of our studio audience. You can also watch the shows at lakecomagazine.com as we provide programming to inform, enlighten, and maybe even enrage you. On Lake County Magazine Talk Show with Terry and Pete the Tax Guy, Wednesday mornings at 9 a.m. Like racing? Try the Checkered Flag Show, hosted by Ace Naylor on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. All ages and divisions in regional and national fields. Joni Lane brings a positive light to you every Monday at 3 p.m. Pasha Space brings an international flair as they discuss ecological, health, and social issues in Haiti with people around the world. End up your week with positive, conscious sounds on Saturday at 9 a.m. with Sister T on the Bridge. This show is also simulcast on KMEC 105.1 FM in Ukiah. Our latest show, LCM TV News, is brought to you live Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at noon, and rebroadcast at 6:30 p.m. and noon daily, Tuesday, Saturday, and Sunday, featuring national, regional, and local news, weather, and sports. We have it all here for you on your local TV station, LCM TV. Join us online and soon on Roku, giving you access to all the best Lake County has to offer. We are LCMTV.com, your multimedia connection. Tune in for the fun. It's live TV at its best.
Hi, and welcome back to A Positive Light. I am your host, Joni Lane, and we are talking about the 3 difficult practices. We were discussing earlier the karmic seeds, the seeds of habit. Noticing our behavior, noticing our patterns. There's a difference between karma and samsara, which is cycle suffering, and Shempa, which is the moment something happens that causes us unease. Our button was pushed and now we feel like we want to react in our regular chain reaction that we always go to, that causes us suffering. The seeds that we have are from our childhood. There's zillions of them, literally. I mean, if you look at a lifetime, there are so many things that we have learned that we don't like, that we have built automatic responses to. Those are seeds. And these seeds grow and grow, and they are very healthy the more we practice them. So the more we practice these unhealthy patterns of behavior, these unhealthy responses, the more we go to them. The healthier they are. I shouldn't say healthier, the stronger they are. They pull us into a place that makes us feel very powerful, when in fact we are not powerful. We are losing our power because we're losing our temper. And we're not being the kind, compassionate, open-hearted people that we really are. We tend to hide that open-hearted kindness in this society. And it's, when you think about the world in general, we've changed a lot in this society where we used to help each other, and now we're afraid of each other. It's a message in music these days. It's a message on the media. We learn to not trust. We learn to defend ourselves when we don't need to. We learn to be very defensive, unhappy, unhealthy people. And then we want to know why we're so unhappy. But it's something that we've learned to do. So how do you unlearn it? How do you do something different? Thich Nhat Hanh talks about the seeds. If you plant a happiness seed and water it, it will grow many flowers. He talks about the mustard seed, very similarly to what Jesus spoke about in the Bible about the mustard seed. There's also seeds of unhealthy behavior. And Pema Chodron had a really, really cool way of talking about it. She was discussing with her Rinpoche, how do you make the seeds go away? How do you not get involved in them if there's so many and they're so deeply rooted? And he said to sit with it, that uncomfortable feeling you have when you really want to just lash out at someone, when you really want to get pulled into that behavior, and you don't do it. It's really an awkward feeling. It's very uncomfortable because we're not used to it. It's not our go-to place. And he said, yes, when it's that uncomfortable, you're in the right place, and that's where you sit. You just sit with that. And she came up with this feeling of, it feels like I'm on fire. It feels so uncomfortable. I don't want to sit in it. It feels like I'm on fire. And he said, good. You're burning the karmic seeds. Picture it as every time you sit in that uncomfortable place, instead of being pulled into that behavior, you're burning those seeds of bad behavior or unhealthy behavior or uncomfortable behavior. The behavior that brings really unhappiness to your life. So she said at that point, every time she would get pulled into that place where she really wanted to lash out or come back at somebody with that knee-jerk reaction and didn't, she sat in it and thought, I'm burning those seeds. I'm destroying that response. I'm burning it up. And in burning that up, the ashes are refertilizing the ground for new healthy seeds, which she then, after I'm sure months of sitting with this, began to sow new healthy seeds, new go-to places, new healthy compassionate reactions. And I thought that was a really great way of looking at it. Burning up the karmic seeds, creating a healthy field for new seeds to grow. So she actually made a conscious choice to make a change in her life, and she said it was very difficult, and when I practice it, it's very difficult. But I noticed, like anything else, that when I practice it, the easier it gets. And the easier it gets, the more I can look at those Shenpa moments and let them go. And decide I don't want to step into that. I don't want to get sucked into that behavior. I've done it, and it doesn't feel good. But then I'm like anyone else, I start beating myself up. Oh shoot, I did it again. I didn't want to go there. But then I stopped that, thinking, okay, you don't want to beat yourself up. But there's a whole process that goes on. It's very convoluted and it's very confusing sometimes. But whenever you're trying to change your behavior into something better, it's always a process. It's not easy. Sometimes it's easy, but not often. So the choice you make is to either get caught in the Shenpa and go down the same old road of anger, or choose something different. I've noticed that when I really get caught up in the anger, and I really start dramatizing and really start spinning a story in my head, I'm adding a lot of kerosene to that fire, and it is really out of control now. And now my anger's gone, out of control. I will feel bad about it. I will feel bad that I've gone there. But then when I pause and I sit and I breathe and I think about it, I intentionally say to myself, okay, I did that. I noticed how that all progressed. I saw what happened. I witnessed it. I'm not going to do it again. Next time I'm going to take a breath and pause and just not get involved in that behavior. Once I actually say that, it's easier. It's easier to step away from that habitual pattern. So I'm causing a rebirth. It's the way I like to say it. Rebirthing a new reaction on purpose. I have a purpose. The purpose to my thinking, the purpose to not reacting is to change and to plant a new seed, a new rebirthing of a new behavior. If you can practice no harm, which they talk about in Buddhism all the time, no harm, it's no harm to yourself as well. So when you catch yourself getting caught in the moments that make you cause suffering for yourself, don't beat yourself up, because that's harming yourself. If you're really critical of yourself, like we tend to be, and I know I tend to be, that's causing self-harm, and that's not going to help you out at all. You're not going to feel any better with that. So when you catch yourself putting yourself down or saying harsh things to yourself, step back from that as well. Pause, take a breath, step back, and just let things be. You don't even have to react. You don't have to get involved. Just let go. Let it be. The more you don't give into your Shenpa behavior, the more you won't give into it. The more you do choose to do something different, and the more you act on something different, a fresh behavior, the easier that gets too. So all of this is about practice. Noticing it, first of all, noticing and acknowledging your behavior. Don't judge yourself, just look at it, acknowledge it for what it is. The second thing is to pause and decide whether you can make a change in your behavior. Can you act differently? Can you not go down the same road as always? If you don't know what to do, then don't go anywhere. Just pause and let it go. I can tell you that in that pause and letting it go, other behaviors will naturally come up. You can use your intelligent mind to act on purpose, to speak and act with a compassionate, open heart. When we stop getting emotionally involved in something in a heated, angry way, and choose our higher mind to decide, even in an uncomfortable way, I'm going to do something different. And it is uncomfortable. We're not used to it. But if we're using an open mind and a kind heart, we're going to act in a better way. And everybody will be happier. Not just you, but the rest of the people involved. And this also has a ripple effect on the world and the interconnectedness of the world. When you act kind toward another person who is trying really hard to get you hooked into some behavior, it disarms them. And they usually have no choice but to join you in the compassionate behavior. So it starts with us. It starts with you. Our behavior can change things one person at a time. We can start with ourselves first. It's pretty simple. It's very difficult to do. So my suggestion for this week is to practice letting go of the storylines. When you notice that you're starting to spin a story in your head, stop and breathe and go, oh, I'm doing that. Okay, I'm going to let that go. If you get caught in your Shempa moment and somebody has pushed your button and you don't really know what to do, but you don't want to respond in the same old way, and it feels uncomfortable because you don't know where to go, sit in that discomfort. Visualize yourself destroying those karmic seeds of discomfort and fertilizing the ground with new seeds that will cause you happiness. You may not know what behaviors to use to change, but not going to the same old behavior that causes pain is a really good step in ending it. By letting go of the storyline, you're not allowing yourself to get involved in it. And you're creating firmer ground under your feet. If you notice that you're, the few times when you do get caught up in your Shempa, and you're going down that road of habit, and you're just lashing out and getting caught up in the anger, if you look at that, you don't feel grounded. You feel real flighty. You feel like you're hovering in the air. But if you can sit in the discomfort of not responding, you're actually creating a firmer ground under your feet. You're going to create new reactions that are based on compassion and your higher intelligent mind. And those are very grounding. I like to describe the pause of Shempa as being awake in all situations and finding the middle ground and truth as life presents itself to you. And I wrote this down because I wanted to say it correctly. During my meditations, when I look at the things that I've gotten caught up in, and how I feel when I really pause, that's what keeps coming into my mind, that I am being awake in all situations and finding middle ground and truth as life presents itself to me. So hopefully you can take a little bit of what I said today and practice it. And just whenever you think about it during the week, just kind of bring it to the forefront of your mind and go, oh yeah, I want to practice that. I know that I get caught up in that sometimes, so I'm going to make a point of taking a day or taking a moment even. And the more often you see those moments come up, and the more often you participate in the pause, the more often you'll realize that you're not participating, that you're not fanning those flames of anger, and you may begin to feel less stress. So let's hope that's the case. I'm going to take the last few minutes to do some meditation. And before I do, I want to thank LCM TV for having us here every Monday at 3 o'clock Pacific Daylight Time. I thank Sam Houston for his music that you're listening to, Beyond the Crescent Moon. And thank Mark for his hard work, our engineer. So Mark's going to be playing the music, Sam's music, while I do a little guided meditation. And hopefully you'll close your eyes and kind of follow along, take a couple of deep breaths, and let some of that anxiety go. So bringing yourself into your body, taking a few deep breaths. And as you exhale, releasing any tension or stress that you're holding in your body. You may do a little body scan to see if you're holding any tension in your legs, your hips. And let your shoulders relax, and your jaw muscle. Let your belly relax. You want to notice the air as it fills your lungs. Notice how your lungs expand. Notice how your body relaxes as you exhale. You might notice the air as it enters your nostrils and swirls around in the back of your throat. How your lungs expand, your chest expands as the air enters. Relaxing a bit more, letting go a little bit more as you exhale. And you might visualize a stream in front of you. You're sitting at the side of a stream. It's a pleasant day in the shade of a tree. You might feel the wind on your skin. And the water is trickling by in the stream. If a thought comes into your mind, you can place the thought like a leaf on the water and let it float on by. And if another thought comes, you can place that on the stream and let it float by. Just allow yourself just a few minutes to sit in your body and breathe. Relaxing your muscles as you exhale. Letting yourself feel a little heavier in your seat. Let the thoughts come in, let them go. If the thoughts continue to come in, you may want to concentrate on your breath as it enters your lungs. Your chest expands. And you exhale, releasing any tension you're holding. Notice how your seat feels heavy when you're sitting. And you feel grounded to the earth. Any tension is floating away. And you can allow your breath to dispel your stress. Maybe the stress is melting into the earth. Your body feels heavy. Continue to pay attention to your breath as it enters your lungs. Exhaling and releasing stress, letting go of any tension you're holding in your body. Placing your thoughts on the stream and allowing them to go by, just floating away. Attention to your feet and your legs, letting go of any tension. Letting go of the tension in your knees, your thighs, and hips. With every breath, the tension leaves your body. Your stomach is still relaxed and your chest expands with every breath. Your shoulders are relaxed, your arms, your hands and fingers are relaxed. Attention back to your breath, expanding your lungs as you breathe in, and relaxing a bit more as you exhale. Relaxing your neck, the back of your head, and your scalp. Relaxing your forehead, and your cheek muscles, ears. And letting your throat and your tongue relax as you breathe in. Fill your lungs with air. Noticing your chest expanding. Continue to pay attention to your breath, letting your thoughts go. And we'll see you next week. Continue to breathe and relax and listen to the music. And let your thoughts go.